Good evening, everyone. My name is Devin Zayas, and I'm currently living in Okinawa, Japan. I'll be your speaker for the next 6 minutes, and I thought it'd be a good idea to tell you a little bit about myself since we'll be with each other for the next 8 weeks. I want to talk about 3 things. I want to talk about my life before the Air Force, my life during the Air Force, and my future plans once I leave the Air Force. So now we know the ingredients, let's bake this cake. My life before the Air Force is fairly simple. My parents were divorced. When I was 11, my mom moved me out of Chicago into a suburb known as Des Plaines, where I stayed until I graduated high school. In high school, I was a fairly poor student. I hated doing my homework, but I was a good test taker. I was really active in sports. I did various sports such as football, volleyball, and tennis, but my main sport was fencing. Yes, fencing with the swords. I didn't build fences. With fencing, I traveled the country. I went to various tournaments such as Nationals and Junior Olympics, and I was a nationally rated fencer, which put me on the points list, which is how they choose Olympic hopefuls. My dad was prior Navy, so he always encouraged me to join the military to help pay for college and get life experience that I couldn't get with going to college straight out of high school. So 2 months after I graduated high school, I joined the Air Force, which leads me to my life right now. I've been in it for 5.5 years. I've had 2 jobs, hopefully no more, and I've been to several bases. My first job, I was a cyber transfer technician, which simply I was a computer network engineer. I connected computing devices, such as computers or telephones, via switches, routers, data lines, things of that nature. Back in 2012, I was cross-trained into aircraft maintenance, where I now work as a E-3 Century aircraft maintainer, maintaining the computer and electronic warfare system. I've been to several bases, as I said. My first base was Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi, where I went to technical training school. My first real base was Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska, where I stayed for 3 years. I also was deployed once when I was there for 6 months to Training Center at Manas, which was in Kyrgyzstan. And that base was a transitioning base where people went to Afghanistan or came back from Afghanistan. So it was a fairly neat experience for me. After Alaska, I came here to Okinawa, Japan, where I currently work at Kadena Air Base as a aircraft maintainer. I have about 7 months left in the Air Force, which leads me into my future plans. I plan on getting out in around July, August timeframe, and I hope to go back to school to get my degree in computer science and work as a network engineer, my first job in the Air Force. That's what I'm doing when I take it out. I'm looking at a few schools. I'm looking at University of Illinois Chicago, and I'm looking at Northwestern University. Northwestern's fairly competitive school, so it's going to be hard to get into, but pretty excited and pretty hopeful. In conclusion, we went over my life before the Air Force, my parents moving me from Chicago to Des Plaines. We went over my life during the Air Force, where I had 2 jobs, cyber transfer technician, and I was an aircraft maintainer. And then we went over what I did. What I want to do once I leave the Air Force is go back to school, get my degree, and then finally work in computer engineering. That's all about me, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be here all 8 weeks if you have any questions. Thank you. Good night.